Hi everyone, thank you very much, and thank you guys for asking me to do this. I actually feel quite intimidated doing this because I have... What do you say to a group of people who have been through what you've been through for the last couple of days? What do you add to that? And I struggle a little bit with it. But I was toying with this idea of babies and bathwater, and realising I'm speaking to an international crowd and sometimes English translations don't always translate. I just thought I'd better explain what I mean by that. We have this expression in English, that throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which means if you've got something good, but it's kind of wrapped up in other things that need to be disposed of, be careful you don't throw out the good stuff with the thing that needs to be disposed of. And we talk a lot about the things that are wrong with school, about the things that need changing about school, about the things that are broken about school. And I just got thinking, maybe it's not all broken. Maybe there's some things in there that do work. And what would they be? So just exploring a few ideas, a couple of stories I'd like to tell you, and share a couple of things with you and see where they go. So here we are, we're at this 21st Century Learning Conference, and I noticed the theme for this conference is the digital learning imperative. And it's an interesting word, that word imperative. It's not the digital learning suggestion or the digital learning, do it if you'd like to. We're calling it an imperative, something that you must do. And I'd kind of like to explore that idea a little bit. So digital learning imperative. Before we do, I just want to hook onto this word learning. Because I think, would you agree with me that out of those three words, that's probably the most important one in that phrase? Yeah? So learning, and we talk a lot about learning. I like that one. Don't worry that your children don't listen to you. Worry that they're watching everything you do. When we talk about learning, it's kind of actually hard to have the conversation about learning sometimes. This is a map I found online of a kind of a chart showing all the different flavours and varieties of what we call learning, from Vygotskyism and Skinnerism over here, and you've got Illich and the deschooling movement and Dewey and Glasser and the whole thing up there. And when we have a conversation about learning, when we sit down and talk to someone about, an idea about learning, it's interesting because where do you sit on that? Because if someone's over there and someone's over there and we're both talking about learning, it's like having a political debate. We're just both fundamentally on different pages. So that's one of the big problems when you start talking about learning and how you might change it, is we all come to it from different perspectives. And even sitting in some of the sessions yesterday and hearing the conversations going along, and I'd hear something that someone would say and I think, that's a great idea, I'm on board with that. And then I'd kind of think, how does that translate to kindergarten? I don't know if that makes as much sense if I apply it into kindergarten, or if I get an idea that works in kindergarten. I'm not sure how that would work with Year 9 and the lowest Year 9 maths class. So it's really complex trying to have some of these conversations because there's not really a common language to talk about learning all the time. I just want to tell you a little story. Does anyone know what this is? Anyone? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's called a Coolgardie safe. It's a device that was invented out in the outback areas of Western Australia to keep food cool. It doesn't keep it cold, it's not a refrigerator, but it keeps it cool. You fill that pot up the top there with water, and it drips down onto the hessian, and the hessian gets damp and wet, and as it evaporates, it creates a cool space inside. So quite an inventive little thing. My son, when he was in grade 3, was learning about ways to keep food safe. And they'd learnt about this Coolgardie fridge. So he should have known about it, right? Because the teacher taught it. But we used to go camping a lot when the kids were little. And we used to go camping by rivers. And sometimes what we'd do is we'd get mesh bags and we'd put all the beer in a mesh bag and we'd tie it to a rope and we'd toss it in the stream because the stream was like near zero temperature. And so when the teacher said on the worksheet, don't you love that, how do we keep food cold? Of course, my son went, you put it in a bag and throw it in the river. And when I picked him up from school that afternoon, I've turned up and the teachers met me at the door and said, I need to talk to you, Mr. Betcher. Oh, what's the problem? Oh, it's about your son. Oh. So I go in and my son, who's a lovely kid, sitting in the corner, literally cowering in the corner, right? Looking down, not making eye contact. I said, what's the problem? I thought he'd killed somebody. And the teacher says, I asked him a question about how you keep food cold and he gave me this ridiculous answer about throwing food in the river. And it was a sort of a... Now, my kid never recovered from that. He hated school for the next 10 years. And I think that's incredibly sad. Something as simple as a teacher being so narrow-minded that they couldn't see that maybe there's an alternative answer to something. Maybe there's an alternative viewpoint to something. And it ruined a kid's experience of school. I think that's really sad. I told this little story in the creativity session we did yesterday, but I'm going to just read it from this book. The book is called Art and Fear, and it's a lovely little story about learning. And it goes like this. The ceramics teacher announced on opening day that he was dividing the class into two groups. All those on the left side of the studio, he said, would be graded solely on the quantity of work they produced. All those on the right, solely on the quality. His procedure was simple. On the final day of class, he would bring in his bathroom scales and weigh the work of the quantity group, 50 pounds of pots rated an A, 40 pounds rated a B, and so on. Those being graded on quality, however, needed to produce only one pot, albeit a perfect one, to get an A. Well, came grading time and a curious fact emerged. The works of the highest quality were all produced by the group being graded for quantity. It seems that while the quantity group was busily churning out piles of work and learning from their mistakes, the quality group had sat around theorising about perfection and in the end had little to show for their efforts than grandiose theories and a pile of dead clay. I thought that was really interesting when I read that. This idea of play and iteration and tinkering and giving students time to just get it wrong before they get it right. And I think that's one of the things that we're really missing. And it's encouragingly, it's one of the things I keep hearing talking about over the last couple of days. So, it's good that we're on that track. I don't agree with everything this guy says, but this is John Hattie, and he does a lot of meta-research. In other words, he looks at other people's research into education and tries to draw conclusions from it. And John's done over 800 he's looked at over 800 meta-analyses. So he's taken other people's research on education and tried to draw out what it actually means. And in the process of doing that, he's tracking 150 different indicators of achievement or influences on achievement. And just for those who maybe aren't that totally familiar with John's work, it works a little bit like this. If you take a factor, say homework, and you measure it over time and you look at lots and lots of studies to do with homework to see what effect that has on student learning, you can give it a ranking score, what he calls what's it called? A effect size score, thank you so much. And anything that's in the range less than 0, it is actually taking students backwards. So an example of that would be something like if a student changes schools regularly. So if you keep pulling a kid out of school and shifting them around, that has a negative effect size. Anything in the 0 to 2 range is developmental. In other words, if you did nothing, the child would have done that anyway. Okay? Anything that's 2 to 4, or 0.2 to 0.4, is a typical teacher effect. So if you're just an ordinary teacher, no one special, and you go in there and you just basically do your job, your student will typically improve by 0.3 to 0.4 anyway, or 0.2 to 0.4. Anything above 0.4 is considered a good effect. What's interesting, and I won't take you through the whole research, obviously, but what I found interesting, the question I would be asking, right, is what's number one? What's the thing that actually makes the biggest difference? And interestingly, it's a teacher who has high expectations. Isn't that interesting? That's the number one thing that makes a difference in schools, is a teacher who has high expectations. In fact, it has an effect size, according to Hattie, of 1.44, off the chart. So I won't bore you with any more of that. Go and read his research if you're interested in that. But there is definitely a big correlation between things like student-teacher relationships, student expectations of what students are capable of, pushing students to be better than they are. That's what makes a difference. And I'm not making that up. That's what the research says, whether you agree with it or not. This is my daughter. She's just graduated from school. She's just finished this year. And she's just been accepted into the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts. Now, if you're in Australia, you know that's one of the best acting schools in Australia. Her passion, the thing she's wanted to do since she was a tiny kid, was to act and sing and be in musicals and all that sort of stuff. And it's been a sole focus of her. Now, she's been really fortunate. She's gone to a school where they really value that. This photo was taken at a school production. And the thing I think that has pushed my daughter to excel is having high expectations of her teachers. The teachers produce performances, plays, where it's expected that it will be as good as a Broadway production. That's just expected. It's not pretending to act. It's actually acting. And my friend down here who got the award for the School of the Year, where are you? Wave your hand at me. I mean, you were talking in the video there about what you guys do there in terms of your kids are not just playing at looking at a document, you're working with actual researchers. You're doing real work. Sorry, who was that? That was you, sorry. It's all about kids doing real stuff that matters, that they're passionate about, and being pushed to levels of excellence. There's a little video I once saw about Steve Jobs, and they were interviewing one of the guys who was on the original Mac team about working with Steve Jobs, and I thought this was an interesting quote.
He wanted you to be great, and he wanted you to create something that was great, and he was going to make you do that.
You know, Steve Jobs got a lot of flack about being a jerk sometimes, about the way he treated people. Obviously, he was some sort of a genius, but he got a lot of flack about the way he treated people. But those who worked with Jobs would often tell those sorts of stories, that we did what we did. We innovated and produced impossible things because we were pushed to do impossible things. We were pushed beyond what we thought we could do. Professor Stephen over there, we had a chat once on Skype, and I remember you said to me once that the most important thing, our job as a teacher, beyond everything else, the thing we should be doing is pushing our kids to be better than they are, is always making them better than they are. So thank you for that. I've never forgotten that. So that's just a few thoughts about this idea of learning. I just want to talk to you about the idea of digital learning, because obviously learning doesn't have to be digital. So digital learning. You know, we keep pumping devices into schools. We keep putting computers in there. And I really think sometimes you've got to stop and ask the question, has anything really changed? In some places it has. But I know in my country where I come from, we had a government that actually funded putting computers into the hands of every kid. And I'm pretty sure there's lots of places in Australia that nothing's changed. It's made no difference. So it's not about putting devices into kids' hands. This photograph was taken in May 2000, 13 years ago. And those of you probably will recognise it's over on Lantau Island. And that's a group of students, some of them are from my class in Australia, some are from a class in Chicago, some are from a class in Tokyo. And we actually worked together on a collaborative website project to build a website together and to collaborate and do a global project. It was 1999 we did that. So technically this is not 21st century learning, just so you know. Okay? And our prize for winning this competition, we actually won it. We were deemed to have created the best collaborative project in the world. And the pride on the faces of those kids when they found out that they won something that was the best in the world, I mean, it's something that you can never take away from them. I got a couple of photos of them working back in 1999, and I can tell it's last century because I'm still wearing a watch, and they let me wear shirts like that to work. But they're gathered there around my little IBM ThinkPad, which at the time was the most powerful computer in the whole school. And we were doing a video conference. Now, in order to match up the time zones, these kids had to come to school early. I think we were here at like 6:30. And the American kids stayed back a little bit late. And here we were chatting. And you can see that this is a video conference. So I've got my kids up there, and this is in the Japanese school over on the corner here, and there's a chat going on. So this technology is not new. We talk about this like we've suddenly reinvented fire, right? Oh, you can do Google Hangouts. This technology's been around for a long time. There are some differences now, of course, but it's not a new thing. This is a little snippet of the chat that they were having. And that bit up the top there, where the answer is, that is okay, we are a team, I distinctly remember the question that's scrolled off the screen so you can't see it. But I remember the question that was asked to elicit that response. And the question was, our kids had asked the Japanese students if they were able to program in JavaScript. And they said, no, we're not sure how to do that. And their answer was, that's okay, we're a team. And then the next thing the Japanese kid said was, thanks, well, we'll rely on you. And I love that teamwork going on there. That all of us don't have to be great at everything. We're a team. We can share that load. And the next question they're going to say, we have some people over here that are good at it. Are you able to edit digital video? And her answer is, we can, exclamation point. Probably. I love that. A go-getter attitude. Yeah, we can probably do it. We'll try it. Now, I don't know if you remember what it was like to work with digital video back in 1999. And especially if you wanted to do a collaborative digital video. So you wanted to do, we'll video a bit and you'll video a bit. We'll bring them together and we'll have a video that all works together. Back in 1999, that's what you put it on. You actually recorded it on a tape. And if you wanted to edit that tape with some footage that someone else had made in another country, the simplest way was to drop it in an airmail bag and send it to them, and they would edit it. And there would hopefully be a finished product somewhere. That's how you did it. Now, of course, you go to YouTube and you log into your YouTube account and there's a setting in there where you can come up with this generic email address, and if you just mail a piece of footage to that email address, it'll put it into your YouTube account for you. It's a little bit simpler now. When we were working on these projects 13 years ago, we thought it'd be cool to have one of these newfangled digital cameras. Nowadays, we just call them cameras, right? But this was the digital camera we bought. This was state of the art, right? Look, it took 500 photos and it lasted up to 1.5 hours. Awesome. So that was the camera we had. And for film, it used those. Remember that? Did anyone have one of these? Yeah, weren't they cool? So we thought this was great. You could never run out of film. All you had was unlimited boxes of floppy disks. So that was kind of how we did things back in the day. This was digital learning. We're still learning, and this was digital. It's interesting when you think about the floppy disks. It still makes me laugh, though, that on things like Microsoft Word, we still have a save icon that the kids go, what the hell is that? I don't know what that is. What is that blue thing? And even on our mobile phones now, like if you look on your mobile phone, you've got this symbol here, but really, when's the last time you used one of those? It's just not right. I'm not going to mention anything about this except to say that if you're old enough, you'll remember the relationship between these two things. There are tons of things that have been obsoleted, that have just disappeared, that no longer make sense. Things like optical discs are on their way out. Last time you saw a knob on something to control it, you know. Ink, hotel keys, lots of things that have just vanished. And they've just vanished. Sometimes we haven't even noticed they've vanished. They've just vanished. So anyway, back to my kids who won this internet competition. So this photo was taken up in the Marriott Hotel, which is probably just not too far from here. And this was the award ceremony. So just like our esteemed people here just won an award, so did my kids and their partners. And I like this photo because they finished their acceptance speech with the phrase, winning this really put a smile on our face, and then they held up their pieces of paper like that. They printed them all out. When they won this award, I asked them to write an acceptance speech. I said, you're going to get an award tomorrow. You need to say something when you accept it. Can you just, as a group, go and sit under the stairs there, and don't come out until you've written a speech. And I don't want to know what it says. You write it, you're delivering it tomorrow. And I'd like to read you the speech that they came up with. And it still kind of gives me goosebumps every time I read it. They wrote, this project has had an enormous impact on our lives. It taught us how to be part of a team and to take our own initiative to achieve our goals. It gave us a worldwide perspective, and it helped us appreciate our own cultures as well. Having a multicultural team brought us the challenges of language barriers, time zones, different cultural perspectives, but it also brought a broader understanding, greater diversity of opinion, and it changed many of our stereotypes. Our countries have gone from being just names on a map to become real places with history, heritage, and customs. Plus, we became friends with people from all over the world. As we worked together, we learned how to accept constructive criticism and to politely communicate our views about other people's ideas, even when we didn't agree with them. It took the individual talents of everyone in our team, the leaders, the designers, the programmers, the organisers, the musicians, the artists, the writers, the motivators, the stressed and the sane, all woven together to bring our visions to reality. I love that. I still carry that around with me and I read it occasionally because that to me summed up why I was a teacher. And it was the moment that something snapped inside me. And nothing has ever been the same since. And seeing kids discover what it meant to be learners and what it meant to be global citizens and what it meant to be people and what it meant to be human was the most powerful experience that I've experienced as a teacher. And when you look at that list of things that they took away from the experience, and remember this is their words, they're the things that they took away from a learning experience that was digital. And I thought to myself, that's kind of extraordinary. They didn't say, we learnt to use computers better. They didn't say, we learnt to program. They didn't say any of that geeky stuff. What they took away with it was human values. And that's, to me, what digital learning is all about. It's not about getting kids to do stuff with computers for the sake of doing stuff with computers. It's about getting kids to do rich, deep, authentic learning that matters, that they're passionate about. And computers just happen to be a great tool to help them do that. When I wrote my reflection about what those kids had done, I think I distilled it down to 4 things that to me have always been kind of the cornerstone now of the way I think about teaching. And that is, first, you've got to give kids something to care about, something that matters to them, their passions or the things that, some sort of authenticity to what they're doing. The second thing you've got to do is to give them the tools they need. There's no good getting students fired up about doing something interesting if you don't empower them to do it. So you've got to give them some tools. I think you've got to give kids choices because they're not all the same. You've got to let them work at their own rates or work up their own passions or take on their own skills. In that thing, when the kids were saying, we had the programmers and the artists and the writers, and everyone brought a different skill to the table. And finally, and most importantly, you've got to get out of their way. You've got to not interfere with the process. And we're all guilty of it. We all do it with our kids. We all set them work to do, and then we kind of interfere. And we try and, now there's a difference between interfering and guiding, but sometimes we interfere too much. Get out of their way. Let them make mistakes. When I say that to teachers, they go, but what about, how do we teach the kids how to do all this stuff? That's how kids learn to use computers. Right? They'll work it out. Just get out of their way. Give them something interesting to work on, something they care about, give them the tools, give them choices, and get out of their way. And I hear that sort of those 4 points phrased in all sorts of different ways. You hear Dan Pink talk about mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and I guess it's the same kind of thing. So you hear that idea all the time. It's not different. It's just this is how I discovered, for me, how it made sense. And that brings us to the word imperative. We talked in the beginning about imperative, why this is important, why it matters now. I was doing digital learning with kids a long time ago, and many of you have as well. And we're trying to say to the rest of the world now, you should all start realising this matters. Not just learning, that always matters, but digital learning. Why does that matter? And there's a couple of reasons. And I think the biggest one is that technology removes the friction. It takes away the friction. So when we were emailing video cassettes across the world, putting them in packages and mailing video cassettes across the world, that was hard. It was expensive. It was time consuming. Now it's easy. You go to YouTube and you click that little link. Right? It removes a lot of the friction. And you start to think about what happened when friction was removed from the music business. You know? Put your hand up if you've been in a record store lately. Okay, I knew you would. Okay, that's why you don't see so many of them. Because the way we deal with music now, for many of us, is different. And the reason it's different is because technology has disintermediated the process. It hasn't made music less important. In fact, we're probably listening and buying and experiencing more music than ever. But the way we do it is different. And in the process, it's decimated industries. It's destroyed the way things used to be. What happened when friction was removed from the photography business? You know, when I was a kid and interested in photography, my father gave me his old Voigtlander camera, and I used to get film and stick it in there and wind it around and go out and take photos. You know, most people don't use film anymore. Yeah, that's why I laughed before. You know, people still say the term digital camera. No, it's just a camera now because there really isn't that much option for it not to be anything else. But in the process of moving from photography to digital photography, again, all those stores that used to develop film, gone. All those, film industries, Kodak, gone. Decimated the industry. Blockbuster, video. What happened when friction was removed from the video store business? I read recently that Blockbuster at one point had, I think it was 9,000 stores around the world, or maybe it was just the US. It was 9,000 stores, and they got down to 300 stores. And just a couple of weeks ago, they finally sent the memo out and said, close the rest of them. They're all gone. Okay. The idea of someone wandering down the street, wandering into a video store, picking something off the shelf, carrying it home in a bag, and watching it, and then taking it back, and getting late fees for it not being back on time, done. Now you have an Apple TV or a Roku box or a Chrome key or something, and you plug it into your TV, and I want to watch that video now, and you just do, because technology's removed the friction from the process. It's just made it easy. And in the process, it's decimated industries. And you see it happening all over the place. 99 Designs. Anyone use 99 Designs? It's a design agency. So if you want design work done, you just put out your scope of works on the internet, and people come in and bid on it, and then they submit designs. My wife just published her first novel, and the cover, she put it up on 99 Designs. Now she got something like 118 different design ideas from people submitting on this work. And what it's done, it's removed the barrier between the buyer and the seller. What used to be hard is now easy. Same with Elance. People freelancing for work. Remove the barrier between the buyer and the seller. eHarmony. Remove the barrier between the person looking for love and the other person looking for love. Airbnb. People renting out their homes to people to stay in. Remove the barrier between people looking for accommodation and people offering accommodation. You remove those barriers, you remove the friction, you end up with massive disintermediation, and you destroy industries. You see it over and over again. And so it kind of begs this question, right? What happens as friction is removed from education? Because that's what's happening now. We're taking the friction away from education. We're making it easier to do stuff. And what happens? Just want to show you this little video.
What is glossophobia?
Glossophobia, or speech anxiety, is the fear of public speaking.
Now we are the masters of our fate. Sure I am that the task which has been set us is not above our strength, that its pangs and toils are not beyond our endurance.
In nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in, never give in, never, never, never.
And you might have seen the other one. There's another one that they made with a kid trying to learn cricket. He's really bad at cricket, so he goes and Googles, how do I hit a cricket ball, and learns about all different cricket techniques and goes out there and hits a six, So the idea now is, you're no longer the magic in the room. If a kid wants to learn something without you, they will, because they can. And we heard, I was a fella's name yesterday talking about, you know, the broadband generation, the broadband kids. You know, they don't need you anymore. We've got to stop seeing. We've got to be able to differentiate between the container and the content. Okay, school is not learning. School is the container. The content is the learning, and we can take away the container. We can repackage it. Learning can be contained in. Learning can be set free in all sorts of ways, right? The school's just one way of delivering that learning. But now you've got all these options. Open courseware and Stack Overflow. And they say on Stack Overflow, if you have a programming question, the average response time to get an answer is 12 minutes. 12 minutes. So, you know, there's places you turn to, places you get answers, places you can learn. Go watch TED, lynda.com. There's all sorts of places now where kids can go to learn stuff where they don't need you. In fact, I think it's probably true that a curious kid with an internet connection can probably learn anything they want. So I'm just going to finish up with this little video here.
Where's his right wing? He's just lost his wing.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
No! Amazing! Damn.
You know, when the wings fall off, you better be pretty good at learning, unlearning, and relearning. You can be a great pilot, and you can know all sorts of acrobatic skills, but when the wing comes off, you better unlearn a whole bunch of stuff about aerodynamics really quickly and relearn some new rules when the plane's flying this way instead of that way. And as the friction gets removed from what we do, and we start to get disintermediated in the same way the video business, you don't want to be the next video business, right? As that starts to happen to what we do on a day-to-day basis, we better be really good at learning, unlearning, and relearning because things are changing around us. So this quote, this was another quote that changed my life from Seymour Papert. You know, we need to produce people who know how to act when they're faced with situations for which they were not specifically prepared. And we do a lot of preparing kids in schools for situations that we've prepared them for. You know, we teach them all the stuff they need to know in order to ask some questions about it on a test. Right? We need to know how kids can respond to things that they haven't been prepared for. And that means we've got to teach them not to learn, but to learn, how to teach themselves new skills, how to go and find things out for themselves. So is that scary? Maybe. You know, there's a lot of people that go, wow, I don't know how I'm going to deal with all this change, you know. But I really think if you're a real teacher, how can you not be inspired by the possibilities of all of that? Thank you very much.